Before we begin, I wish to point out that what I wish to stress in the piece I'm about to read are two important points. The first point is that this event, which took place in Listowel Barracks in June 1920, was a game changer. It was one of the most crucial events in the course of the War of Independence. And the second point is that the mutiny of the constables didn't come out from left field, from nowhere. Already for a number of years there was disillusionment and discontent and mutiny bubbling inside the ranks of the Royal Irish Constabulary. So these are the 2 points that I wish to stress in this particular piece, which I'm now about to read. At the outset, I wish to thank ex-Minister Jimmy Deenan and the committee for the privilege of participating in this well-deserved commemoration of the remarkable courage and patriotism of the 15 members of the Royal Irish Constabulary who were involved in the historic event which occurred in the Listowel Police Barracks a century ago. It is wonderful to see that so many of the proud relatives of these men are participating in this commemoration. The crucial events, influence, and the importance of this event is now generally agreed by historians. The mutiny of these 15 members of the RIC in the police barracks in Listowel in June 1920 was one of the most significant events in Ireland's War of Independence. 15 constables refused to be transferred and to hand their barracks over to the military. As news of this spread throughout the RIC and appeared later in the press, the pace of members of the force taking early retirement are being dismissed, quickened. Eventually, by 1 March 1921, 2,570 members had left the force. Their places were taken by the hastily recruited Black and Tans. For the most part, these were ex-soldiers, and they received little, if any, serious police training. Their indiscipline and the outrages for which they were responsible alienated the Irish people, most of whom had no enthusiasm whatsoever for the policy and actions of Sinn Féin and the IRA. The result was that the Crown forces found themselves operating in an increasingly hostile environment, which cast serious doubts on their capacity to successfully pacify the country. To understand and to appreciate this event, it is necessary to place oneself in the context of those who were involved in it. The Rising in 1916, and particularly the executions in its immediate aftermath, had a considerable effect on some members of the RIC. They foresaw the dilemma in which, as members of the paramilitary force, they would be placed in the event of a serious conflict between Irish separatists and the Crown forces. Coincidentally, in 1917-1918, in spite of government opposition, some of the British police had succeeded in reorganising the National Union of Police and Prison Officers, which had been founded earlier in 1913. With the support of representatives of the RIC and the Dublin Metropolitan Police, Sergeant Thomas J. McKelligot at RIC established an Irish branch of the National Union of Police and Prison Officers in 1918. According to a report in the Irish Independent of the 8th of February 1919, and I quote, "Practically all the DMP had joined the Union, including the Harbour Police. The majority of prison officials were also members, and so far 3,500 members of the RIC." End of quote. In the event, while the National Union of Police and Prison Officers was recognised by the authorities in London, McKelligot and his colleagues were informed that they were not to join the Union, as they belonged to a semi-military force under the direct control of the Crown, and subject in many respects to the discipline and the general conditions of employment of the Army and the Navy. Notwithstanding this rejection, the Irish Police Union, that's the Irish branch of the Union, held its first All-Ireland Conference in April 1919, at which one of the resolutions carried was that the force be disarmed. In the meantime, in the struggle between the Crown forces and those of Sinn Féin, more and more members of the RSE were becoming victims of the IRA's murderous campaign against the force. On the fateful day, 19th of June 1920, Colonel George Ferguson Smith, the Divisional Commissioner of the Combined Crown Forces, Military and Police of the province of Munster, left the constables in the barracks in Listowel in no doubt that they were to be in the very forefront of an all-out war on the forces of Sinn Féin. His bellicose and highly emotional address simply occasioned a mutiny which was bubbling beneath the surface.